Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast, a podcast carefully designed to introduce a wide range of very talented and highly skilled professionals ready to share their knowledge and advice with you. Please welcome the host of I Got a Guy podcast, Michael Drelichars. Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast. I'm your host, Michael Drelichars. Thank you so much for being with us again this week. To all of our loyal subscribers, we appreciate you sticking with us and tuning in every week and meeting a different guest. Different industry, different segments, different interests and thoughts and experiences. If you're new to I Got a Guy podcast, we welcome you. And if you want to hear of any of our past episodes, I encourage you to go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com for a list of all of our past episodes and a brief synopsis about each one of them, along with information on how to access those guests should you need their services. So that's igotaguypodcast.com. And if you'd like to be a guest on our upcoming show, we encourage you to fill out the contact form on our website. That'll come right to me. We'll have a conversation. We'll see how we can get you into the schedule. So we'd love to have new guests, new ideas, and new perspectives. So that's what keeps the show fresh. As many of you know, this show was born out of reading a book called The Go-Giver. Bob Burg is the author, and it's a great little book about the art of referral networking. And many people think networking is all about getting referrals. The reality is successful networkers succeed because they give referrals. And in the book, there are 5 laws of stratospheric success. The one we're going to focus on today is called the law of value. And it's defined by give more in value than you receive in payment. Give more in value than you receive in payment. And I think as you get to know our guest today, you'll see how this really lines up with her personality and her business and how she serves her clients. So I encourage you to keep that thought throughout the show as we talk with our guest this week. So let's turn to our guest. This week, we are meeting with Nora O'Leary from Capital Construction Solutions. Nora, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here.
That's my pleasure. You know, Nora, you and I met just a few weeks ago, actually, at a networking event. And I think those events that the GOA holds are very, very successful, the ChamberNet events. And I've been a member of GOA for many years, but I've always been tied up on Wednesday mornings. My schedule just adjusted, so I'm able to participate in those ChamberNet events. And
it worked out for me.
Yeah. Well, and I've met some really interesting people recently, and it's every meeting is just different group of folks. And sometimes there's 40, 50 people in a room. It's really amazing. So they have a nice format. And a few weeks ago, we actually interviewed Jamie from the GOA on the show as well. And we talked a little bit about ChamberNet as well. So, but anyway, great. It was great to meet you. And I'm glad we're able to hook up today and record this episode.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. This will be my first podcast, so bear with me.
Oh, you'll be a professional no time. But let's start, Nora. Tell us a bit about your background and how you came to find Capital Construction Solutions.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that my background is definitely not traditional. So
Okay.
up until this past November, I was a speech therapist in nursing homes for close to 10 years. So in that, I did the traditional coursework where you do 4 years of undergrad and then you go straight into your master's program and then continue to work in nursing homes after that. All around the Chicagoland area, bopping around all the way up to the Wisconsin border near Zion and then all the way down near Aurora. So I did that for 10 years. And then after the pandemic, things have shifted a lot, whether it's personal values or way you spend your time, you kind of take a pause and want to align more with those values. So I started looking for other opportunities and fell into the amazing capital construction role.
That's great. That's awesome. That's an interesting transition from speech pathology to commercial construction.
Yes, that is one that you're probably not going to hear often, but here I am.
That's great. Well, I'm sure they're happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about Capital Construction. I know you guys are in the commercial real estate. Talk about how that works.
Would be happy to. So Capital Construction is a national general contractor, meaning that we build all sorts of different type of commercial spaces throughout the United States. So our office is out in Plainfield, and we're on a 5-acre parcel of land out there. Absolutely beautiful. If you make it out that way, we'd be happy to have you. In our business model, we focus on restaurants, retail spaces. We even got into the healthcare space during COVID. We wanted to keep our brand really nimble so that we were able to move within different markets. And that has kept a really successful flow of business happening over the course of 25 years. So
That's great. So do you just focus on new construction,
uh,
standalone buildings?
good question. So we do both ground up and tenant improvement.
Okay.
Uh, we focus a lot on that office interior. That's how we got our start. We're doing a ton of that, and now we have really developed our team into different roles, whether they're doing ground up petroleum or they're doing a restaurant build out and switching it from restaurant A to restaurant B. Our guys will come in there and get in and get out so that the customer is able to get their door open and get their actual business going. So.
Well, that's interesting. So yeah, the interesting thing is that transitioning from one restaurant to another, and you see
Yeah.
it sometimes you can look at the building like, oh, I thought there used to be a bank. Oh, now it's a Burger
Yeah.
King. So,
Yeah. So
so
hopefully that's capital construction that's in there and doing that switch. But you'll see a lot of that, especially in Chicago. These leases will expire and then the broker will find someone new to go in. It's not always just a revamp of the initial tenant doing a facelift, but it might go from a restaurant to, like you were saying, like an eye care place. And so that requires a little bit of extra love and care, and that's where our team comes in.
okay. So do you does capital construction focus on the architecture, the design as well, or just swinging the hammers and building?
Swinging hammers and building. That's where we like to stay. Yeah, so there are companies that do the design build process, but that is not us. We like to focus all of our efforts on what we know how to do, and that's swinging hammers. So our people, our team, we only stay within the construction build itself. We work alongside architects. Those are some of our favorite people in the industry.
Sure.
Their way to look at a space and think of the design and the interior designers and how they all pull it together for the client is something that we admire. But it's not something that we want to do personally. We really want to focus on executing their vision and making sure that it is up to quality standard. So that's really the sandbox that we like to play in.
Sure, sure. So then you do the construction part, the putting up the walls, the partitions, replacing
Sure.
the flooring. Then you work with an electrician and others, or do you do all that as well?
Right. So we'll subcontract. So we have a great list of subs, whether they're in the Chicagoland area or national, that we work with. And so we align with them to make sure that we have a great, whether it's a carpenter or it's an electrician, we're going to call in those different markets. We're going to do our backgrounds just to make sure that they're qualified, and then we'll hire them underneath us as subcontractors.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting. Related to this, my daughter is working for a firm in Arlington Heights, electrical contractor, and they're doing a lot of work on retrofitting buildings and businesses to LED lighting.
Yes, that's hot
And
right now. Very
yeah,
good.
she's doing a lot of that. She's still a senior in college. She has an
Okay.
internship. Hopefully, she gets a full-time position there. But there's a lot of effort in that area to retrofit these. And these brick and mortar businesses, whether it be restaurants or retail stores, they revamp every 5-6 years anyway, right?
Yeah, a little
New
facelift.
tools. Yeah,
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 the
facelift.
the technology improves. Depending on the client, they're gonna want to get a fresh revamp to keep up with their brand or new
Sure.
technologies that they're implementing, and so that's where that tenant improvement piece will come. You'll see it a lot now too within the office space. People are moving offices. They're finding that they want more of an open workflow plan or things of that nature. So they'll switch around their office or move to a new space.
Right. Yeah, I have heard that, and I've heard of some office buildings converting to apartments or condominiums. Have you
Yes,
been
that is a
involved in any of that?
hot topic. Hot
Is it?
topic within the commercial real estate space. When you go to these larger networking groups, there are a lot of talks of, okay, we have these big buildings. What are they going to look like? Maybe not this year, but what is the future of downtown?
Hmm.
So that is something to keep an eye on in the future. We'll leave that conversation to see what happens within the city and other cities that we can get inspired from, and then Capital will be happy to get in the mix after that.
Sure, sure, no doubt. So you're based in Plainfield. Do you work just in the Chicagoland area, or do you? Where do you? What's your breadth of services?
Yeah, so capital construction is a little bit different than a national or a local general contractor. We love doing our local work. We have our local team. And then if there's a brand that's expanding, we're able to move markets with them. So we have traveling superintendents that will travel from Chicago and they'll move if the client's moving to North Carolina or they're moving to Washington. Our team is able to move with them so that that client knows the project manager, they know the superintendents, they know their personalities, they know our systems, so that when that client is moving to a new market, it reduces that communication barrier and that
Right.
that getting to know someone or a new system, it reduces that confusion, and allows them to execute the project more smoothly. So we're all in all different markets. We're licensed in 47 states, and happy to move with clients throughout the United States to meet their needs.
That's great. So you have a pretty sizable crew then, if you're traveling to 47 different states.
We do. We have a great crew, and we're always moving and adding depending on the different markets. We'll have different projects and different superintendents that are those traveling pieces. So right now we have 9 project managers, and they're responsible for selecting the correct superintendent and making sure that if there's a job that we have a superintendent on site. So that's
Sure.
something that Capital really believes in, is that,
Mhm.
you might have having someone there all day is important because there's going to be little tiny things, whether the schedule changes of when the inspector is coming. There needs to be a guy on site to build that rapport and make sure that nothing is being missed, that those boxes are being checked. So when you walk on into a Capital site, you will see one of our superintendents that's able to answer those questions and really coordinate to make sure that that timeline is being met.
Yeah, it really means a lot to the continuity of the project. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, we even in our own business in precise fleet tracking, we pride ourselves on being on site as well. I think there are easier, less expensive ways to perform the business, but I don't think more successful ways.
We would agree
So
with you there. Yeah.
yeah. Something so there's a cost to it, but there's a huge benefit to it, and it differentiates. Uh, I know my company, I'm sure Capital Construction as well, from a lot of others that since we want to mail it in, and not be their feet on the street.
Yeah, we've found that same success. Having our guys there, having that, even though it seems like a hefty cost up front, that that person on the ground is going to be there. They're going to know everything that came through the door, how it was executed. They're going to be there to take photos, to answer questions. If you're able to have a question from your client, you can just call our person who's on site and he can answer it right then. You don't need to wait for an email or from someone to drive to the site. And that time is what's really important and really valuable so that the person on the other end of the phone can get back to whatever they need to be doing and move on to the next
Right.
task.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as you mentioned earlier, it also helps expedite the process to getting the project done so that the tenant can move in and start running their business.
That's the most important thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. I mean,
we want those doors open and according to timeline.
yeah, yeah. So then you work with if you working with a major let's say fast food restaurant and
Sure.
they're opening up in a new market and you move to North Carolina to do the build outs, you work with local subcontractors in that market.
Right.
Your superintendent will travel there, but you work with local subcontractors that you vet to make sure that they're qualified, certified,
Yeah.
probably in a lot of cases union, right?
So we're open shop. So depending on the
You
client,
are.
we work with different clients in different markets. And so that allows us that ability to be flexible and meet the client's needs. And so when we're moving into a new market, because we've been in business for so long and because we've been to that market multiple times. We really have built that long-standing relationship with those local subs in the area. And then we also stick with the same team. So we have a lot of guys that are out in North Carolina, and the team out there is doing a lot of work. And so, they've been there for so long that they know the subs too. So it becomes a real team effort in every market that we go to.
That's great. That's great. So if our listeners, are looking to expand their business or open up a new brick and mortar business, what's some of the things they should look at prior to getting started? Reach out to Capital Construction for that,
Yeah, good
for their
question.
build out.
So when we're talking with people, especially people who are new business owners or new franchisees, whatever the client may be, we want to get involved early. And that's because being able to let someone know, for example, we'll use Chicago local. So if you're going to be doing a project in Chicago, where your project is going to make a huge difference on your cost. And I think that's a huge factor for a lot of clients, especially if they're new and this is the first time that they're doing something. There's going to be something, for example, there will be dumpsters. Like dumpsters can seem like a small little side add-on, something that you just think about at the end. But a dumpster in downtown Chicago is going to be a much different price than a dumpster on the outside of Chicago or the suburbs or in a rural area outside of Chicagoland. That meaning you're going to have dumpster pickups. You're going to have fees to come pick up the dumpster. You're going to have to get permits. And so that small little factor is going to make an impact on your bottom line and where you're able to sign that lease. So I would always say get the contractors involved at the beginning. We're happy to answer any questions. It's a part of our job to pay it forward that you are doing it something for the first time. This is not your area of expertise. Your
Right.
area of expertise is being a broker or being an architect or being the business person themselves. Get us involved. We're a phone call away. Happy to answer it. We've probably been asked that question before. And if we don't know the answer, we'll figure it out for you so that you can focus on what's really important for your business.
Right. And that's a really important part. I mean, when you think about all the experiences that your organization has, and over the years, all the build outs, all the construction projects you've worked on, you've probably come across most of these obstacles at one stage or another,
Yeah.
and you probably have the shortcuts to kind of get to the resolution quickly without being too expensive or cause delays.
Yeah. Yeah. So our team, because between everyone at the office, they've had so much experience, they can rely on each other. If they don't know the answer, they're able to walk down to their person next door. So in our office, all the superintendents can call their project manager. The project manager is in office and they can get a hold of each other right away. So if someone is in, let's say, Massachusetts, they can call their program manager, they can get that question answered, or if they're in it and they switch to a new market, they can call to the next project manager. And that level of continuity and the teamwork between the guys both in the office and in the field is what provides value for our clients. That expertise of people who have been there, that this isn't a business that's been around for 5 to 10 years. This is a business that's been doing the work, swinging the hammer for 15, 20, 25 years, some people in the office. So that's when they've been around that long, they're doing something right.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. Oh, that's great. So we're going to take a break here, Nora, but why don't you share your contact information for our listeners if they
Sure.
want to reach out to you? What's the best way for them to contact you? Is it email? Is it phone calls? A text message? What's your preference?
Yeah, email is great. So my email would be my first initial N, O'Leary, O'Leary, at capital, CAPITOL, construct.com. And that way I can answer your questions. I can get you through the door. And then if you need a question answered, if you're a subcontractor, I can get you over to our guy for the bid list. Or if you're a new client, I can get you to the person who specializes in restaurant or medical, and filter it that way.
Oh, great. So it's a great way to start. It's just send you an email with the details and you get this process started.
We'll get you going. No problem.
That's great. All right, that's awesome. So we're going to take a quick break here. We'll come back after listening to our sponsor and continue. Let's talk about some successes and some unique situations that you've come across. I want our listeners to get an idea, maybe kind of get their arms around what exactly you do. And you've done a nice job of setting the stage. But let's get into some more details, if you could, after the break. Okay.
Yeah, good question.
So stick with us. We'll be back in just a minute or so, and we'll continue talking here with Nora O'Leary. So we'll be right back. Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. I hope you're getting a lot of knowledge from this week's guest. But now a word from our sponsor. If your business uses heavy equipment as part of its daily routine, sadly, I don't need to educate you on the reality that this equipment has been the focus of many local thieves either. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions works with business owners that own commercial vehicles and heavy equipment. We help these business owners enhance their growth and profit through the use of GPS tracking technology. Recovering a stolen asset is just one way we contribute to the bottom line of the business. Our GPS tracking units used in heavy equipment are weather tight so they can handle the elements and even have an internal battery to continue to report its location should the battery in the asset be disconnected. We have several examples of the benefits of GPS tracking in heavy equipment. Reach out to Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions for a detailed discussion about our options and to see if it makes sense for your business. You can find Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions at precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call us at 847-865-6008. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. GPS tracking made simple. Now, back to the show. Okay, we are back. I'm Michael Drellichars, host of I Got a Guy podcast. Thank you for sticking with us. Our guest this week is Nora O'Leary from Capital Construction Solutions. Nora, thanks for joining us this week. Enjoyed the conversation thus far and look forward to further discussions here.
Me too.
So Nora, we before the break, we talked all about the high level projects that you folks have worked on, the new construction from the ground up, and the tenant improvement projects, and that's really helpful. And we think about in our neighborhoods when you drive around, you can see a building that's been vacant for 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden, poof, there's a new restaurant in there, or it's another bank, or a Walgreens, or something, and it just kind of seems for us, people outside of the business, it seems almost like it happens out of thin air. But a lot of work's gone into that before that construction happens. And tell us a little bit more about some of those projects you've worked on.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you say that. It is a very long process. So, for example, if you are a client who has a vision of opening a new store, you're going to have the idea in your head, you get your processes going, you meet your people, you meet your broker. And when you're touring these different spaces, they're showing you what might have been an old bar, and you have to use your imagination with the help of the broker and hopefully an architect or your interior designer to imagine what that space could be. So that process is where it begins, and capital construction will come in there to execute that vision. So depending on the client, we do a lot of restaurant work. I always like to say that our team is a bunch of foodies, so we love doing that. Whether the clients that we've worked for in the past, a lot of them have been local and then they've expanded. So we've done a lot of work doing, for example, like a Panera is a good example. We've done some work with them. And that's a brand that people are familiar with. And they do both ground up and that tenant improvement piece. Now, depending on if a ground up is going to be a longer process, right? You have to acquire the land, and depending on the client, they're going to want to obtain that real estate themselves, or they'll lease it from a development company who actually owns the block of land. And then capital will come in and we will either do the ground up if that's the type of work that it is, or that tenant improvement. You'll see a really fast turnaround in that tenant improvement space. And so that's when you think that, oh, that was only, you looked once, it was one thing, and then you blinked, and again, now it's a Panera. But that piece really comes in from having great blueprints from the architect, and great communication within the teams. So once you've done one, so if you've done one Panera or one, we'll call it restaurant A, and you need to do another restaurant, if we've already done restaurant A, we can do restaurant A again, and then we can get better and we can do restaurant A again. It's more smooth and more smooth and more smooth. And so that process, that rollout is really where we find our success. And that's when you're going to see shorter timelines. You're going to see more precise execution, is that repeat client work. So you'll see a ton of that with capital construction.
Sure. So in the case of a franchise, unlike a Panera, like you said, their furnishings are all the same. Their tables, their chairs, their countertops. Do your crews assemble that and put that or do they just do the white box and somebody else builds out the furnishings?
Yeah, so depending on the client, we're going to have different people who are responsible for their different roles, and that goes to say for all the different subs, right? There are people, there will be aspects within their bid that they either include or exclude, and that can come down to what you were mentioning earlier about cost savings,
Sure.
what you're willing to implement. But our subcontractors will take care of all of that. We'll just do the oversight and make sure that that's all being executed according to what the client is expecting.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, I know around here, I'm in the Mount Prospect area, and we have a local restaurant, the old Italian restaurant. It's been around for decades, and it's being converted into a cannabis store.
Oh, wow.
And it's been vacant for several months, and we've all heard the rumors that it's coming, but it was like, well, nothing's happening, and
Yeah, there's always a ton of behind the scenes. And
yeah,
that can really come down to any number of things. It could be permits, it can be
sure,
so many different things, but you will see that a lot. And the anticipation builds. So maybe it's good for their marketing team. It really gets people thinking, what could it be? Is it happening? Um,
right,
but
right,
yeah, that's good to see that new business is going on in Mount Prospect. I actually grew up there. I'm a Prospect Night alum. So happy to hear that. That's good.
yeah. My kids are Hersey Huskies,
Okay, very good. I
so
love that.
yeah, it's been great. I've been out here a long time. But yeah, it's just really interesting to watch these environments transform, and you look at now. I mean, we're seeing the big malls kind
Yeah,
of change.
definitely.
So are you involved in some of those transitions also?
Yep. So that's where a lot of our tenant improvement will come in.
Okay.
We're going to come in and we're going to do the retail stores within the space. We don't get involved with that multifamily that you might see. So we can use the Vernon Hills. If you're familiar with Vernon
Yep.
Hills, they're doing, they're taking a mall that I remember going to as a kid. And they're changing it to include apartment spaces, right? So they have the apartment spaces on the top, and then capital construction, for example, we did Love Sack up there. Okay, so our team came in and we did that little build out, that tenant improvement on the bottom space. We do not touch the apartment above, but all of that commercial on the bottom, those are the types of clients that we do a lot of work with.
Okay. Okay. So the bottom line is there is hope for those malls
There's
repurposing
hope.
themselves.
I am impressed. Yes,
Yeah.
Tom Sheely over there, over in Vernon Hills. I mean, I drove up there just to tell him how incredible it was. And you can see that they're really thinking. Vernon Hills doesn't necessarily have a downtown, right? So now there's a space within the community where you can grab a cup of coffee, you can meet your friend for at their house and hang out there and then go out to dinner. And so those community spaces, I've seen a lot
Mhm.
of those.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see a lot more of those in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great to see the transformation and somebody's broader vision. Somebody had to kind of foresee this, and not everybody has that ability to see the end result
Yes.
until it starts to take shape. But
Yeah.
somebody had to look at a blank slate and said, "Oh, I can see this totally different," and then just start sketching, and it's pretty fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I would say during, the past few months as I've transitioned into this role, one of the things that I found the most valuable is getting out and going to these events where you can have conversations. And what I've learned is those economic development directors, Kevin Kramer from Hoffman Estates and Kevin from over in Oswego, these economic development directors, they really have vision for where
Yeah,
they want to see their town and someplace that they love in 10 years. And so they're thinking through with the whole team. They're calling on, the planners and the architects and the customers and talking and
Mhm.
holding meetings and saying, okay, this is your town. This is it in 2024, but what do you want it to look like in 2036? And those have been some of the most amazing conversations that I've had thus far, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And in a prior life, I had a retail business in Barrington,
Oh,
and I remember speaking with the development director, and you're exactly right. They think differently than the average person,
yeah,
and when you're in your business day to day trying to make ends meet, hiring your employees, serving
yeah,
your employees, serving your clients, building it
yeah,
out, changing, growing your business. Um, the thought of thinking what's it going to look like in 2036,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's so far down the road. You're like,
mm,
well, I need to get through this week.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's putting those two concepts together, putting those two personalities together. It's an interesting mix,
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
definitely you have to have that blend of ideas. Otherwise, you become very stagnant because the years
yeah.
fly by, and if you don't stay current, you're getting passed up in no time.
Totally agree. Yeah, and I think that, going back to being having a career before this and being in a new career, I'm coming at it from a different lens,
Hmm.
kind of fresh eyes on a new situation, and to see the way that the commercial real estate community really works together as a team and they can see value in why we're all here. We know that you need someone to swing the hammer with capital construction as much as you need the economic development director to have the vision so that we have something to build. You need the development people who are going to be able to lock down a large plot of land and secure that anchor tenant. Without them funding all that money and creating that vision and that plan, there would be no work for the architect to create the structure, right? For the interior designer to imagine this beautiful space where ultimately the end user is going to give back to the community. So it really is like a whole ecosystem that I had no idea existed, a year ago, but I'm very happy to be in now.
Right. Well, and the other component is you have to have the residential community there to support those businesses.
Yes.
So
Yes.
as Chicago area keeps expanding, and I have friends that are in the trades, and they're working in the collar counties, building houses as fast as they can.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting blend because you build new houses, so you get new people moving in, but then they have to be served. They need those businesses to serve
Yeah.
them, and whether it be the buildings for the police and the fire, or it's the strip malls and it's the dry cleaners and the laundry, the grocery stores and that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah.
it's really that's an interesting puzzle to put together.
Yeah. It takes a village, and each village has its own personality. And I think that's one
Yeah,
aspect that I've really loved too. You live in Mount Prospect. I grew up in Mount Prospect. It feels different. It feels different to me than going even next door to Arlington Heights. It's different.
right.
Um, But I think that that's what's really unique about the Chicagoland area is that so many, all the 77 different neighborhoods, they have a personality. All the suburbs have a personality. And that comes from the people, right? The
Sure.
people match their environment, the environment matches the people. So the businesses that come in and the way that the community responds to that business has a profound impact on where that town is going to be in 5 years, in 10 years.
Right.
So I'm excited to see how things shift now that I can see it from that lens.
Yeah, yeah. You have a totally different perspective on it, and it is interesting to think about where it's going to go in 10 years, but where it's going to be in 30 years. I remember
Yeah,
my parents. They're both passed now, but they used to talk about the neighborhoods in Chicago. They would have the Polish community and the Italian community and the German community, and the Irish community, and those were neighborhoods unto themselves. And that's all kind of morphed over the years. And now it's very blended. It's different, but it's changed, and your retail businesses have to change along with that,
yep,
and in changing that kind of changes the residential community. So it's
Yep.
it's an interesting um, sphere that continues to spin and evolve.
I'm here for it. I'm ready to watch and
Yeah,
be a part of it, hopefully.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, it's ever evolving, and that's great. And when we came out of the pandemic, there were so many vacant office buildings, and I know there's a lot of talk in the media about what are you going to do with all these buildings that are people weren't going back to. And I'm really encouraged by the fact that you all are able to do something with that real estate. To
Yes.
let it sit vacant is a waste. But let's do something with that and make it productive.
Yeah.
And
And they're coming up with all sorts of new concepts and ideas that I think are, it's a time to experiment. No one has the right answer, and that's okay.
yeah,
That allows new businesses to thrive, to give opportunity to those who might have a new idea, you
right,
know, different than a gym. They might think of, what is a coffee spot/gym look like? It allows her that creativity and that entrepreneurship that I
right.
think, within the generations, you can see this entrepreneurial spirit within them. They have their online businesses that might then go into a brick and mortar, which then might shape that community. So it will be interesting to see. Yeah, 30 years from now. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is. And you know, we are such a melting pot, and probably every city's like this, but certainly in Chicago, there's so many varied experiences and interests and
Yeah.
backgrounds that you know it's a gift because we can't all be the same.
Yeah. We
We
are very,
stagnate.
very fortunate. We're very
Yeah,
fortunate. We get to have
and
complex, interesting conversations at any turn, with someone who comes from a completely different life view, and they're
yeah,
next door. They're down the street.
right.
So I think that has a huge advantage to Chicago and the Chicagoland area in general.
Yeah, yeah, and it breeds hope and future opportunities, and then it'll spark somebody else to step out of their comfort zone and be creative, and so
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm glad to hear all about the successes that Capital Construction has been able to be part of, and and the fact that you guys have been around for so long, I'm happy to hear that you're continuing and growing, and there's
Yeah.
more opportunity.
Yeah,
That's
we've been
great.
growing quite a bit. And that was really thanks to the visionaries behind the scenes, our leadership, who, when construction during the pandemic was, coming to a halt for a lot of people, our leadership really, they're determined to keep everyone working and make sure that everyone was able to provide for their family. And so we pivoted. And I think in construction or whatever field you're in, but that ability to be nimble is where you're going to see your success, and you're going to see your team come together so that you are able to survive the hard times. And then now we've expanded, we've doubled, we've brought on new people, we're training more people, and so that in that community there, because you went through that hard time and you saw your leaders bring the group together, that's really where that camaraderie comes from and makes for a strong team moving forward.
Yeah, most definitely. And you know, the pandemic was terrible in so many aspects, but and a lot of businesses didn't survive. But when you see one that was able to take a very negative situation and use it to their advantage and be creative and be different, be willing to step outside the box and your comfort zone, and now you're more successful than you were before, more than likely. You're doing different things that you would have never thought about,
Yeah.
and so it's encouraging to hear those stories because that's what will breed a longevity in the business.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with that too. That longevity comes from, um, that moment in time when people really needed to come together. And so when you have that type of situation, people naturally create strong bonds. And so that's what I think you look for in a strong company. is the ability to rely on the person next to you, both on your left and your right. So that's one thing that I really admire about the team for sure.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Any other stories you want to share about some of your successes, some of your unique situations?
Wow, unique situations. Um, so I think what I really have found enjoyable is the way that capital has really provided me an environment to explore because I am new. So my lens is fresh take, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I have to be able to come to the team with, both opportunities to bid on to get them new work, but they're also giving me an opportunity to maybe not find the correct client and figure out why that client isn't right for us and might be good for someone in our network, and so we pass that information
Mm.
along, which I think is really valuable about capital construction. We're not going to be a perfect fit for everybody, but we're going to know a guy who that project might be perfect for.
Sure.
And I think some people in any industry, you can look at things with a scarcity mindset. But if you really view the whole system as a healthy operating organization, and we're all here to help each other, ultimately, we're here to create a bigger, better commercial real estate community, and you do
Mm-hmm.
that through relationships, then we're all going to be successful at the end of the day. So I think for me, that ability for capital to be unique in my eyes is the way they view doing business. It's doing business right. It's doing busy business in a healthy way, and being open to someone like me who might not have the 10 years of swinging a hammer, but I have the soft skills and the authenticity and the genuine care for the greater good that matches the capital brand. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I would admire the most about them for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And that's really it's very encouraging because that's really healthy. It's healthy for the corporation, for its longevity. But more importantly, it's healthy for the individuals here at Capital that are doing all this work.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to know that it's not you're not painted into a small box and you got to stay within that box. You have the ability to ask the wacky question, maybe the way out and left field kind of question, and maybe in that answer is an opportunity. Maybe it's not, but maybe something else comes. So it just kind of gives you that freedom to be yourself and put your
Yeah.
personality into it, and ultimately, all for the better good of the company.
Yeah, I totally agree. Better for the individual, better for your company, and better for the greater commercial real estate community as a whole. And
Yeah.
ultimately, better for, all the end users who are going to be walking around in those spaces.
Right. Yeah. It benefits the entire community, whether they're homeowners, they're renters, they're young people, they're older folks. They're in the communities there, and they need to be served, and so it all kind of works together.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you spending some time with us today to share your story and the story of capital construction. Um,
Appreciate
it's really interesting, and I will look at a vacant piece of property differently now.
you.
I will be
I hope
questioning.
so.
I will be questioning. Who's working behind the scenes on that one. I bet you there's somebody. There's some city planners that are working on something. And
Yeah, city plan. You can think of the whole commercial real estate ecosystem. How many people are connected to that one project? It's
right, right.
amazing.
How
Yeah.
many families is that project feeding over a course of years? But
Yeah.
from the time it starts to when they open their doors, obviously it could be months or years. And in the process, people are doing their thing.
Yeah. Truly incredible. Truly incredible.
That's awesome. That is great. Well, I love that, and thank you again for being with us. And And like I said, early to start the show, that I really picked the law of value, where you give more in value than you receive in payment. And the value you provide is, to these communities and to the neighborhoods and to the business owners, helping them pursue their dreams. So it's just a layer on top of layer of successes for each layer in the process, and that's awesome. So thank you for being part of that, the bigger picture.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing me on and giving me an opportunity to talk about commercial real estate and capital construction. It's been
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And I'm
I'm glad
really
you got through
excited
your.
to check out this book.
Yeah, yeah. You should check that out. The Go Giver. But glad to be your first podcast. You did great. You're a natural, and
Appreciate it.
but we haven't had somebody on from the commercial real estate space before. I've had a lot of different guests on over the last couple of years, but you are first in that space. So I'm happy to continue to bring on new experiences, new industries, new experts in different areas, just to keep rounding us out and keep making us more valuable to our listeners. So thanks for taking care of that. And I do want to throw in a quick little plug for Precise Fleet Tracking, because that's how I pay the bills every day. Precise Fleet Tracking is my day job. This I Got a Guy podcast is a passion of mine, and I really do this to support small businesses and medium businesses throughout the area. I love small businesses. It's really the foundation of our economy and of our country, and we all have to do what we can to support small businesses. So I try to. That's really one of that's the impetus behind this podcast, is to help businesses grow. And I also look to grow my own business, which is Precise Fleet Tracking. We work with companies that own commercial vehicles. We help these customers enhance their growth and profit through using our GPS tracking technology. Sometimes you want to know where your drivers are throughout the day. Sometimes you have to reroute a driver or handle a situation, and knowing where they're at throughout the day is really valuable. Sometimes vehicles or assets can be stolen or misplaced. Using our GPS tracking technology, you'll know where they're at, and you can recover them easily. So we have a lot of different solutions for a lot of different needs. If you have commercial vehicles or commercial assets, and those assets might be trailers, bobcats, lawnmowers, trenchers, etc., we can help you keep control over those assets and maximize your investment in those assets. So reach out to Precise Fleet Tracking at precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com, or call us at 847-865-6008. 847-865-6008. So thank you for that. And Nora, we also should recap your email address one more time before we end the show. I didn't do that before I threw in my plug. But let's tell the listeners again how to reach out to you.
Yeah, I would be happy to talk. My email is NOLEARY, so O'Leary at capital CAPITOL construct.com.
Okay. O'Leary at capitalconstruct.com. Great.
You got it.
We'll have that information on the screen and in our notes. And to our listeners, when you do reach out to Nora, make sure you tell her that you heard about it here on I Got a Guy podcast. Great way for us to connect the dots. So thank you so much again for that, Nora. I appreciate the time you gave us today, and I look forward to hearing more about your successes along the way. So thanks for being part of it. Well, that wraps up another week of I Got a Guy podcast. So thank you for listening, and make it a great week. Take care. Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. For past podcasts and more information, go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. Please share this podcast on your social media feeds, and tune in again next week to I Got a Guy podcast.